The CEO said, "Pretend to be my wife tonight." She said, "Only if you stop pretending you're fine." Evan Whitmore had perfected the art of looking fine while quietly falling apart. In the mirror of the private suite above the Manhattan ballroom, he adjusted his black bow tie for the third time. The tuxedo fit perfectly, the cufflinks were platinum, his hair was controlled, his posture straight, his expression calm enough to be printed in a foundation brochure. Only his right hand betrayed him. It trembled slightly as he read Meredith's message. "I can't do this tonight, Evan. I'm sorry. I can't keep pretending." For a moment, the room lost sound. Below him, the Whitmore Foundation Gala was already filling with donors, board members, reporters, and people who believed champagne was a personality. The night was supposed to raise money for scholarships. It was also supposed to prove that Evan was stable, respectable, and surrounded by a family strong enough to keep custody of his 8-year-old niece, Lucy. Without Meredith beside him, the lie of his marriage would begin to crack, and Henry Vale would be waiting with a hammer. His phone buzzed again, this time from his mother. "Control the room." Evan stared at the message until the words blurred. That was Victoria Whitmore's solution to nearly everything. Grief, scandal, childhood fear, bad press, family collapse. Control the room. He slipped the phone into his pocket and practiced a smile. It looked like a man greeting investors. It did not look like a man raising a child who woke at 2 a.m. asking if dead mothers could still hear promises. Downstairs, Clara Bennett stood near a marble column, wondering if it was possible to be physically rejected by a building. The hotel was all gold light, crystal chandeliers, white flowers, and silent waiters carrying trays of food too small to qualify as decisions. Clara had borrowed her dress from a fellow counselor at the Brooklyn Elementary School where she worked. It was navy, simple, and elegant enough if no one looked too closely at the hem she had fixed with safety pins. Her shoes, however, were a betrayal. By minute 10, they had declared war on both feet. "This is why Cinderella left at midnight," Clara muttered. She had arch damage. She was here because her school had received a Whitmore Foundation grant, and the principal had insisted she attend. Clara was 26, one of the youngest counselors in the district, and still got mistaken for a student teacher by parents who thought age worked like a license of wisdom. She did not belong in this world. She knew it. The world knew it. Then Lucy Whitmore saw her. "Miss Bennett." Lucy ran across the edge of the ballroom and threw both arms around Clara's waist. Clara's face softened instantly. Lucy was all velvet dress, loose curls, and brave eyes that had learned too early how to watch adults for signs of leaving. "Hey, tree house architect," Clara said. "Did you bring your colored pencils, or are you trusting these people with emotional honesty?" Lucy made a face. "Uncle Evan says gala guests don't need emotional honesty." "Your uncle says that?" "No, but his face does." Clara glanced up. Evan Whitmore had just entered the ballroom. She recognized him immediately. Not from magazine covers, though she had seen those. She recognized him from school pickup, always on time, always polished, always polite. The kind of man who signed forms in clean black ink and thanked staff by name but never stayed long enough for Lucy to finish a sentence. His eyes landed on Clara. Recognition passed through them, followed by something almost like relief. Then Henry Vale approached. Henry was handsome in the way knives could be handsome, sharp, expensive, and designed for use. He shook Evan's hand, smiled toward Lucy, then looked around. "Where's Meredith tonight?" Clara saw the pause. It was brief. Most people would miss it. Lucy did not. Evan's phone buzzed again. He checked it. Whatever he saw drained the last color from his face. Henry's smile grew. Evan looked toward the side hallway, then toward Clara and Lucy. His decision happened too fast to be wise. "Miss Bennett," he said, voice low, "may I speak with you for 1 minute?" Clara followed him into the hallway, mostly because Lucy was watching, and partly because Evan looked like a man trying to stop a building from collapsing with one hand. He turned to her. "Pretend to be my wife tonight." Clara blinked, then blinked again. "I'm sorry." "Did you just propose to me?" in the tone of someone purchasing liability insurance. Evan closed his eyes briefly. "I know how it sounds. Do you?" "Because from where I'm standing, it sounds like rich people panic has reached its final form. Meredith isn't coming. Henry is trying to challenge my stability as Lucy's guardian. If this becomes public tonight, it could affect custody proceedings, the board, the foundation. And your solution is to grab the nearest school counselor and turn her into emotional duct tape." He flinched. Good, Clara thought. At least he could still feel impact. "This is about Lucy," Evans said, that stopped her from walking away, not because she trusted him, because Lucy stood a few steps away, pretending not to listen, holding her little silver purse with both hands. Her face carried the terrible seriousness of a child watching adults lie badly for her benefit. Clara looked back at Evan. "You don't need a wife," she said quietly. "You need to stop teaching her that love means smiling while everything burns." His expression tightened. He could negotiate money, contracts, NDAs, reputation access, appearances, but Clara had named the thing under all of it. She stepped closer and lowered her voice. "I'll help you get through tonight, for Lucy, not for your board, not for your mother, not for your donors." Evan nodded once, too quickly. "But I have one condition. Name it, only if you stop pretending you're fine." The hallway seemed to narrow around him. For the first time that evening, Evan had no elegant answer. A minute later, they walked back into the ballroom together. Henry noticed immediately. His eyes moved from Evan to Clara with dangerous amusement. "I'm sorry," Henry said. "I thought Meredith was your wife." Evan's mouth opened. Clara felt disaster forming. "She is," Evan said. "Clara is, a private family name." Clara nearly choked on the champagne a waiter had just handed her. "A private family name?" She turned to him with a smile so bright it should have come with legal warning. "Yes," she said smoothly, "in the Whitmore family. Everyone has at least 3 names, 2 lawyers, and 1 secret nobody mentions during dinner." For half a second, silence. Then a donor laughed. Then another. Even Lucy giggled. Henry's smile stayed in place, but his question lost its teeth. Evan looked at Clara with something close to awe. She did not look proud. She looked like a woman holding a cracked vase together until a child could safely leave the room. And Clara, watching Evan's hand tremble as he reached for his water glass, understood something she had not expected. He was not cold, not exactly. He was a man who had become dangerously good at standing upright while breaking inside. For the next hour, Clara Bennett became Mrs. Whitmore by force of posture, improvisation, and the stubborn refusal to let rich people see her panic. Evan moved beside her through the ballroom like a man walking a tightrope in polished shoes. Every handshake had weight. Every smile had a witness. Every donor seemed to know just enough about his life to be dangerous. Before each introduction, Evan murmured fragments of their invented marriage like emergency instructions. They had met in Boston. They had married privately. They hated discussing personal matters in public. Clara listened, nodded, and decided the entire story sounded like a tax filing with emotional problems. Still, she played along, not perfectly. That was what made it work. Evan was too controlled to be believable as a happily married man. Clara, on the other hand, had the natural looseness of someone who did not care whether a billionaire's wife approved of her fork choices. When an elderly donor's wife asked how they had fallen in love, Evan inhaled as if preparing a statement for federal review. Clara saved him by smiling and saying it had happened slowly, against better judgment. For half a second, Evan forgot himself. A real laugh almost escaped him. He caught it late, but Lucy saw. The little girl sat at the children's table nearby, watching her uncle with wide, suspicious eyes. Evan Whitmore did not laugh like that. Not at school pickups, not during parent conferences. Not when Lucy showed him drawings of tree houses with secret rooms where nobody could leave without permission. Clara noticed Lucy noticing. That was the problem with children. Adults thought they were hiding storms because they had closed the curtains. But children could still hear the thunder. The gala rolled forward in gold light and controlled applause. Clara stood through photographs, donor greetings, and small talk about endowments. She learned that wealthy people could make even charity sound like a merger. She also learned that appetizers at this level were less food than suggestion. A waiter offered her something the size of a postage stamp. Clara stared at it. It appeared to be a cracker wearing a hat. Evan glanced down and saw her expression. The corner of his mouth moved. She leaned slightly toward him and murmured that the cracker had artistic ambition but no practical value. Evan had to turn his face away under the pretense of acknowledging someone across the room. Later, she found herself trapped between 2 donors discussing yacht schedules. Clara misunderstood the phrase boat season and asked, with genuine concern, whether that was when boats reproduced. The silence lasted 1 elegant, catastrophic second. Then Evan coughed into his fist. After that, something changed. He stopped treating Clara only as a solution to a crisis. He started watching her as if she were a window opened in a room he had been suffocating in for years. Clara did not admire his money. She did not fear his mother. She did not melt when board members said his name with reverence. She looked at him as if his title were simply one more thing he hid behind, and Evan, to his own surprise, began to breathe more easily beside her. Lucy found Clara near the dessert table while Evan was pulled into a conversation with trustees. The child's small hand slipped into Clara's palm with an urgency that did not match her velvet dress. Away from the crowd, Lucy looked up at her and asked whether grown-ups were allowed to lie if they called it protecting someone. Clara did not answer quickly. She had spent enough time with children to know they hated soft lies more than hard truths. Soft lies made them feel foolish for knowing what they knew. So Clara crouched carefully, ignoring the protest from her borrowed shoes. She told Lutz that grown-ups sometimes lied because they were scared. Sometimes they thought fear became smaller if they covered it with prettier words. But lying did not make fear vanish, it only made children carry it without a name. Lucy absorbed this with the grave expression of an 8-year-old who had already carried too many unnamed things. Clara wished, fiercely, that Evan had chosen courage earlier. Then Meredith arrived. She did not make an entrance. She did not need to. The room shifted around her anyway. Meredith Shaw was beautiful in a quiet, expensive way, with a silver dress and a face that looked composed from a distance and tired up close. Clara saw Evan go still. Meredith saw Clara at his side and understood the entire lie before anyone explained it. There was no shouting. That somehow made it worse. Meredith took Evan aside near a side corridor lined with white orchids. Clara watched from across the room, Lucy half hidden behind her skirt. Evan's posture was rigid. Meredith's hands remained folded, but her face held a pain Clara recognized. This was not a villain discovering she had been replaced. This was a woman realizing she had been erased for convenience. Meredith had once loved Evan, perhaps not as a wife should, but as someone who had shared a house, a public name, and the unbearable grief after Lucy's mother died. Their marriage had become scaffolding around a family collapse. Useful, visible, hollow. She did not want to be that scaffolding anymore. Clara could not hear every word, but she caught enough. Meredith had come because she could not bear the headlines that might follow her absence. She also could not bear to keep standing in a life that was no longer hers. Evan begged her not to expose the truth tonight. Not for the board. Not for his mother. For Lucy. Unfortunately, Lucy heard her name, and enough of the truth around it. The child's face went blank in that frightening way children's faces do when emotion is too large to show. Then she turned and ran. Evan saw her disappear and panicked. But even his panic was trained. He looked toward the donors first, toward Henry Vale, toward the cameras. His body wanted to chase Lucy. His lifetime of control held him in place. Clara did not wait. She found Lucy in the coat room, tucked between fur wraps and black wool overcoats, hugging her knees beneath a rack of expensive winter things. The room smelled like perfume, cedar, and old money. Clara sat on the floor beside her, not caring what happened to the borrowed dress. Lucy asked if adults always left after promising they would stay. The question hurt because it was not only about Meredith. It was about Lucy's mother, her absent father, her uncle's perfect smile, every adult who had tried to protect her by becoming unreadable. Clara held her gently and did not lie. She told her that adults sometimes made terrible choices when they were afraid of losing someone. But Lucy was not the reason for the lie. She was not the burden. She was not the crack in the family. She was the person everyone should have loved honestly enough to stop pretending. When Evan entered, he looked less like a CEO than he had all night. His bow tie was slightly crooked. His face had lost its careful polish. He saw Lucy crying in Clara's arms, and something in him folded inward. Clara's eyes warned him not to perform, so he did not. He sat on the coat-room floor in his tuxedo, leaving a careful distance between himself and Lucy. He told her Meredith, and he were not married in the way Lucy thought. He said he had been afraid that if people knew the truth, someone might decide he was not the right person to take care of her. Lucy did not forgive him. Not then. Children were not machines that dispensed absolution when adults finally became honest. But she let him sit beside her. Clara stood quietly and stepped toward the door, giving them the privacy Evan should have created from the beginning. Before she left, she heard Lucy ask if he was okay. For once, Evan did not say he was fine. His answer was quiet, uneven, and real. He said he was scared. Lucy reached for his hand. Clara paused outside the coat room, one hand against the wall, her own eyes unexpectedly warm. The lie had not ended. Not yet. But for the first time that night, one honest sentence had survived inside it. By Monday morning, Clara Bennett had become a rumor with good lighting. The photo was everywhere in the small, hungry corners of social media that cared about wealthy families and charity scandals. Evan stood in a black tuxedo beside Lucy, one hand gently resting on the child's shoulder. Clara stood on Lucy's other side, caught mid-smile, looking softer and more intimate than she had felt. The caption beneath the article read, "Whitmore CEO appears with mysterious wife at scholarship gala." Clara stared at it in the teacher's lounge while the coffee machine coughed into a paper cup with the sound of a dying tractor. Her phone buzzed with messages from coworkers. Some were curious, some were teasing. One simply said, "Girl, explain." Clara turned the phone face down. She had spent one night pretending to be someone's wife and somehow looked more married online than most people did after 10 years and a Costco membership. Across Manhattan, Victoria Whitmore was less amused. She summoned Clara to the Whitmore Foundation office that afternoon. The building was all glass, height, and money pretending to be sunlight. Victoria sat behind a desk with fresh white flowers, a legal pad, and the expression of a woman who had never once lost an argument by accident. She did not waste time scolding Clara for the lie. That would have been simple. Instead, she treated Clara like an unexpected but potentially useful problem. For a few weeks, Victoria explained, Clara could continue appearing in carefully chosen settings: a school visit, a family photograph, perhaps one dinner before the custody hearing. Nothing vulgar, nothing dramatic, just enough to calm speculation and show Lucy surrounded by stability. Then Victoria slid an envelope across the desk. The number inside was large enough to make Clara's stomach tighten. It was also exactly the reason she pushed it back. Lucy's trust was not something adults got to rent by the hour. Victoria's face hardened, but Clara did not soften. At 26 she was used to powerful adults assuming her age made her easier to rearrange. Parents did it at school. Administrators did it with budgets. Men in expensive suits did it with smiles. She had learned to stand still and let them realize she was not furniture. Evan found her in the lobby as she was leaving. He looked tired in daylight, less polished. The kind of tired that did not come from missing sleep but from holding up a ceiling no one else admitted was falling. He apologized. Not elegantly. That helped. But he also admitted he did not know how to protect Lucy without continuing the performance. The court wanted stability. The board wanted order. His mother wanted a family portrait with no cracks visible from the street. Clara listened, then told him the truth he kept trying to walk around. The problem was not that he needed help. The problem was that he kept using perfection to cover damage until everyone around him had to guess what was real. A few days later, Evan came to Lucy's school for a meeting. This time he arrived without assistance, no legal team, no mother, no strategy folder thick enough to crush a child. He watched Clara work before the meeting began. A boy with panic attacks sat across from her, twisting a shoelace around his finger. Clara did not drown him in sweetness. She spoke calmly, directly, giving him words small enough to hold. Later, she helped a girl whose parents were divorcing draw 2 houses, connected by a bridge, instead of pretending one house had not broken. Evan began to understand her strength. It was not softness, it was accuracy with kindness inside it. After school, Clara and Evan helped Lucy build a model treehouse for a class project. Lucy insisted it needed 3 exits because people should be allowed to leave without disappearing. Evan did not know what to do with that sentence, so he concentrated on the hot glue gun and managed to attach a popsicle stick ladder to his own cuff. Clara called him a legal hazard with good hair. Lucy laughed so hard she dropped a packet of tiny cardboard windows. Evan laughed too, and for a few minutes nothing was being performed. That was the dangerous part. Clara found herself noticing things she should not notice. The way Evan lowered his voice around frightened children. The way he watched Lucy when she was not looking, as if love had made him permanently afraid. The way he drank terrible teacher lounge coffee without complaint, though his face suggested he was reviewing his will. She liked him. That frightened her more than Victoria's envelope, because liking Evan made the lie harder to hate. Then Henry Vale sent the photograph. It arrived on Evan's phone at 9:13 p.m., Clara leaving the gala with Lucy's hand in hers. Evan behind them, expression protective, almost intimate. A message followed. Interesting choice, using the counselor's scenery. The custody reviewer may have questions. The next morning, Meredith came to see Clara, not at Whitmore's office. At the school, after dismissal when the hallways smelled like crayons, floor wax, and leftover cafeteria pizza, Meredith looked less like the woman from the gala now. No silver dress, no diamonds, just a camel coat, tired eyes, and dignity that seemed to cost her something. She did not accuse Clara of stealing anything. That would have been easier too. Instead, she said, the press had turned her into the missing wife and Clara into the mysterious replacement. She had spent years standing beside Evan because he was kind, because grief had swallowed his family, because Lucy needed familiar faces. But kindness was not marriage. Shared grief was not love, and being useful was not the same as being chosen. Clara had no defense because Meredith had not attacked her. The conversation heard in a quieter way. Before leaving, Meredith said Clara might be the first woman Evan truly looked at instead of looking through on his way to duty. There was no bitterness in it, only sadness. That made it worse. The confrontation came 2 days later at Lucy's school meeting. Clara expected Evan, Lucy's case representative, and the school administrator. Instead, Henry Vale arrived with Victoria. Henry wore concern like a tailored coat. Victoria looked composed enough to frighten furniture. In front of the custody representative, Henry asked whether Clara had crossed professional boundaries by pretending to be Evan's wife. He asked whether Evan had created a false family environment for Lucy. He asked whether a child already grieving could be safely placed with a man who used deception as crisis management. The room seemed to shrink around Clara. Every adult turned toward her. She could have lied. She could have said the gala was misunderstood. She could have protected Evan with one more polished story. But Lucy was sitting outside that office with a backpack full of colored pencils and too many reasons to distrust adults. So Clara told the truth. The night of the gala had been wrong. It had come from fear, but fear did not make dishonesty harmless. She had agreed because she wanted to shield Lucy. But shielding a child with a lie only taught the child that truth was too dangerous to survive. Then she said what mattered most. Lucy did not need a perfect family. She needed adults brave enough to repair what they broke. Evan stood before anyone could redirect blame. He said Clara had not been hired, bought, or used with her consent beyond one desperate mistake he should never have asked her to make. If anyone had confused protection with performance, it was him. If anyone needed to be evaluated for that lie, it was him. Clara looked at him then. Part of her was grateful. Part of her wished he had found that courage before her name became evidence. After the meeting, she walked out alone. Evan followed her only as far as the hallway. She told him she could not keep being his emotional crutch. Not for the board, not for his mother, not even for Lucy. His face changed, but he did not argue. That was how Clara knew he had finally understood something. If he cared about her, truly cared, then the first loving thing he could do was stop turning her into the answer. By the week of the custody hearing, Evan Whitmore had learned that a lie did not collapse all at once. It frayed, first in headlines, then in boardroom whispers, then in a child's drawings. Lucy had stopped drawing tree houses with ladders. Her latest pages showed wooden rooms high in the branches, windows glowing yellow, but no stairs, no ropes, no bridges, no way in or out. When Evan asked why, she kept coloring and said there were no stairs, nobody had to leave. That was when he understood. He had spent months trying to protect Lucy from abandonment by building a perfect story around her. Instead, he had taught her that love was a house with hidden exits. Victoria Whitmore arrived at his apartment that evening with Meredith and a plan. It was elegant, efficient, and morally exhausted. Meredith would appear beside Evan at the custody hearing. They would call the gala photographs a misunderstanding. Clara's presence would be described as professional support for Lucy, nothing more. Evan and Meredith would present a united front, avoid unnecessary personal details, and restore stability before the board meeting that afternoon. Victoria spoke as if truth were a stain that could be lifted with the right legal detergent. Meredith sat quietly through most of it. When Victoria finished, Meredith looked at Evan and said she would stand beside him if it protected Lucy. But she could not keep living as furniture in a house everyone called whole. Evan looked at the two women across from him. His mother believed reputation protected family. Meredith believed kindness could not survive forever inside a lie. And somewhere beyond the apartment, Clara Bennett believed children needed truth more than perfection. 3 women, 3 mirrors, no easy reflection. The next morning, the leaked article hit before breakfast. Whitmore CEO accused of presenting fake wife during custody dispute Henry Vale's. Fingerprints were nowhere official and everywhere obvious. By 9 a.m., donors were calling the foundation. By 10, board members were requesting leadership clarity. By noon, Evan's legal team had prepared a statement that blamed public confusion on Clara's involvement and emphasized that Meredith remained supportive of Evan's household. It was the easiest lie left. It would protect his position. It would also turn Clara into the woman who had crossed a line, Meredith into the wife who had never left, and Lucy into a child expected to feel safe inside another performance. Evan read the statement once, then placed it face down. At the custody hearing, the room was smaller than the fear inside it. Lucy sat with a child advocate outside the main chamber, holding a stuffed rabbit and a colored pencil. Meredith sat on one side of Evan. Victoria sat behind him, so rigid she seemed carved from disappointment. Clara sat near the back, invited to speak because her name had been dragged into the case whether she wanted it there or not. Evan's attorney slid the prepared remarks toward him. Evan did not pick them up. When asked to explain the gala, he stood slowly. For a second, the old instinct returned. Control the room, protect the image, keep the family intact from the outside, even if the inside had gone airless. Then he thought of Lucy's treehouse with no stairs. He told the truth. His marriage to Meredith had ended in every way that mattered before the gala. They had delayed saying so because grief, custody, and reputation had become tangled until honesty felt dangerous. Clara had not been his wife. He had asked her to pretend for one night because he was terrified of losing Lucy. He did not make himself noble. He said the mistake was his. More than that, he admitted he had placed the appearance of a stable family above Lucy's emotional safety. He had believed that if the walls looked strong, Lucy would not notice the foundation cracking. But children noticed. They always noticed. They simply blamed themselves when adults refused to name the damage. His voice roughened then. He still wanted custody of Lucy. Not because he was perfect, or because he could offer her a beautiful apartment, private tutors, and a family name polished enough to impress strangers. He wanted custody because he loved her, because he had been there after her mother died, and because he was finally learning that children did not need adults who never broke. They needed adults who could point to the break and still promise to stay. Meredith spoke next. She did not save him completely. That made her words trustworthy. She said Evan had not been a good husband. They had cared for each other, but care was not the same as love. And grief was not marriage. But she had watched him with Lucy. She had seen him wake at night, learn school routines, sit outside therapy rooms, and make mistakes out of fear rather than indifference. He was learning, she said. And sometimes a child was safer with a flawed person willing to learn than with a flawless story no one was allowed to question. Then Clara was asked to speak. She rose with visible discomfort. She did not look at Evan first. She looked toward the door Lucy waited behind. Clara said she had made a mistake that night, too. She had agreed to a lie because she feared the consequences of refusing. But Lucy's needs had become clearer afterward, not smaller. The child did not need a pretend mother, a silent wife, or a polished family portrait. She needed adults who stopped making her carry secrets that belonged to them. Clara did not romanticize Evan. She said only this: a person who could admit harm in front of the people able to punish him might be closer to safe than a family that survived by painting over cracks and calling it love. The decision was not final. Life rarely gave that kind of clean mercy. But Evan was granted temporary guardianship under review, with conditions: family therapy, transparency regarding household structure, and continued oversight from a child advocate. It was not victory. It was responsibility. Outside the hearing, the board was waiting. By late afternoon, Evan stood in another room under colder lights. Henry Vale presented the scandal as proof of instability. Several directors agreed Evan should step back temporarily from executive authority until an independent review assessed the impact on foundation governance. Evan had enough information to wound Henry badly: a set of emails, a donor conflict, quiet manipulations dressed as oversight. For a moment, the old Evan considered using them. Then he saw Lucy through the glass wall, sitting with Meredith, kicking her feet beneath a chair, watching adults decide whether truth had consequences. So Evan did not turn the room into a knife fight. He accepted the review. He kept temporary custody. He lost part of his power. Henry did not win entirely. His smile faded when the board also ordered an ethics review of the leak. Victoria, for once, said nothing. She looked at her son as if he had disappointed her and become recognizable at the same time. That evening, Evan found Clara outside the courthouse. He did not ask her to come back. He did not ask her to forgive him. He only said that for the first time in his life, he had told the truth without knowing whether it would save anything. Clara looked at him for a long moment. The city moved around them, loud and indifferent. Finally, she said that maybe that was when truth started to matter. Not when it guaranteed a happy ending, but when someone chose it anyway. By autumn, Lucy Whitmore had begun drawing stairs again. Not every treehouse had them. Some still floated too high in the branches, windows glowing from places no one could reach. But more and more, her drawings included ladders, bridges, rope swings, Crooked little steps connecting one room to another. Her therapist called it progress, Evan called it hope, but only when Lucy could not hear him. He had learned not to turn every small improvement into proof that everything was fixed. Nothing was fixed that neatly. His guardianship had been extended under review. Family therapy was required. So was a real support system, not the Whitmore version of support, which usually meant a lawyer, a driver, and someone paid to make problems look less visible. Meredith visited sometimes. She brought Lucy books, sat through awkward dinners, and no longer wore the invisible costume of Evan's perfect wife. She became what she had always been better suited to be, a familiar adult who cared, stayed when she could, and left without lying about why. Evan stepped back from direct executive control for several months. The press called it a leave. The board called it a governance adjustment. Lucy called it Uncle Evan finally learning how toast works. She was not wrong. He burned breakfast often enough that the smoke alarm began to feel like a family member. He appeared less in business magazines and more in school pickup lines. He attended therapy sitting painfully straight in a chair too small for his dignity. He learned that listening to an 8-year-old explain a bad dream required more courage than facing donors. Clara Bennett kept her boundaries. Before she let herself meet Evan as anything other than Lucy's former counselor, she transferred Lucy's care to another therapist. She documented it, explained it, and made sure no one could mistake love for professional compromise. Evan respected that. It made him love her more quietly. They met again one cool afternoon in a Brooklyn park, where Lucy was playing with other children beneath maple trees turning gold at the edges. Evan arrived carrying 2 coffees and a small brown paper bag from a bakery. Clara eyed the bag. "Is that an apology pastry? It's a cinnamon roll." "Reasonable. I once said wealthy apologies should be judged by whether the dessert is normal enough to trust." I remembered. She took the coffee, then studied him. He looked different without the gala lights. Still handsome, still controlled in the bones, but less polished at the edges, as if he had stopped buffing away every sign of being human. He did not say he was fine. Instead, he told her he was still scared, still clumsy, still tempted, some mornings, to become the old version of himself because perfection was easier than honesty. But he no longer wanted Lucy or Clara to love a man edited for public approval. Clara listened. The wind moved through the trees. Nearby, Lucy shouted instructions about a game that appeared to have no rules except her authority. Clara said she did not love perfect men. She also did not want to become the woman assigned to repair him. She only wanted to know if he could keep telling the truth with her, especially when it was uncomfortable. Evan said yes, not quickly, not like a promise made to win the moment. Like a man choosing something he knew would cost him. Then he asked if she would have dinner with him. No fake marriage, no gala, no boardroom, no scandal to survive, just dinner. Clara considered this with exaggerated seriousness. "If you booked a restaurant where the appetizer is the size of a postage stamp, I'm leaving. I booked a diner. A diner? All-day pancakes." Clara smiled despite herself. "That is significant personal growth." Lucy ran toward them then, cheeks flushed, hair coming loose from its braid. She held out a drawing in both hands. A treehouse. This one had windows, a ladder, a rope bridge, and 3 people standing beneath it. Above the branches, in Lucy's careful handwriting, were the words, "People can leave and still come back honest." Evan looked at the drawing for a long time. Then he looked at Clara. Clara did not take his hand immediately. She only reached over and touched his wrist, small, quiet, real, no cameras. No witnesses who mattered beyond a child with colored pencils and a man learning not to hide. Their love had not begun when Clara pretended to be Evan's wife. It began when she asked him to stop pretending he was fine. And it grew when he became brave enough to lose the perfect version of his life, so the people he loved could finally breathe. Sometimes the most dangerous lie is not the one we tell other people. It is the quiet one we repeat to ourselves. "I'm fine. I can handle it." No one needs to see the crack. But love was never meant to be a performance under bright lights. It was never meant to be a perfect smile at a gala, a perfect family photo, or a perfect answer prepared by lawyers. Love begins in the moment someone sees you trembling and does not ask you to look stronger. It begins when a child is finally allowed to ask hard questions. It begins when a man who spent his whole life controlling the room finally chooses to tell the truth inside it. So tell me, would you have forgiven Evan? Would you have trusted Clara's condition? And have you ever loved someone who kept saying they were fine, even when their heart was clearly breaking? This is Soul-Stirring Stories. Remember, the people who love us do not need us to be flawless. They need us to be honest enough to stay.